The first thing I heard that morning wasn't birds or the sprinkler clicking on. It was the unmistakable growl of diesel engines rolling. Across my gravel drive, I stepped. Out with my old ceramic mug, the one my wife gave me on our 10th anniversary, and watched two giant excavators crawl toward my vineyard like metal predators. Sunlight bounced off their buckets, sending cold flashes across rows of ripening grapes. The machines paused at my cedar fence. One operator lifted his visor, staring at my land like he wasn't sure he should be there. The other kept looking toward the HOA president's house. Then I saw her, Vivian Cross, iron gray bob, stiff posture, tablet held like a judge's gavel. Her eyes blinked too quickly, a telltale sign she was excited. Or maybe nervous. Hard to tell which. She pointed toward my vines with the confidence of someone who thought she owned the whole neighborhood. "Remove everything," she told the crew. "All of it goes." Her voice was thin, sharp, rehearsed. The kind of voice people use when they think no one will ever challenge them. My stomach tightened. The wind carried the smell of warm soil and late summer fruit. My wife loved this smell. It was the scent of Sundays, of peace, of home. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. Something in me whispered, this isn't just a violation notice. She's planning to wipe everything out. Then the first excavator revved, bucket rising into the morning light. Right at that moment, a sheriff's cruiser turned the corner and rolled onto my property. Vivian stiffened. The excavator operator froze, and I felt my heart slam once against my ribs. Sheriff Grant stepped out, hat low, jaw set like a man who had already heard too many of Vivian's complaints over the years. His boots hit the ground with a calm authority. "Morning, folks," he said. "I got a call that some demolition work was scheduled here. Before anything happens, I need to verify one thing." He held up a folder. "Who granted HOA permission to operate heavy machinery on this land?" Vivian's face drained of color. Her grip on the tablet tightened until her knuckles went white. "Sheriff, this is common area enforcement," she said. "He has an illegal agricultural operation." "It violates this isn't common area," Sheriff Grant interrupted, tapping the deed. "It's his property." Silence fell so thick I could hear the metal ticking as the excavator engine cooled. Somewhere behind me, a dove fluttered from a fence post. Vivian looked at me like she'd swallowed ice. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was going to be war. I didn't buy land in this HOA for luxury. I bought it because my wife Nora always dreamed of a quiet place where grapevines could stretch toward the morning sun. She talked about making small batches of wine, nothing fancy, just something that reminded her of her childhood. Trips to California. When she passed away from a rare illness 3 years ago, I couldn't stand the empty rooms. So I planted her vineyard every row, every trellis, every irrigation line. Her ashes rest beneath the center vines. That section is still my quiet place, my anchor when the world tilts. I thought neighbors would understand. Some did. Vivian Cross DNT. Vivian had been HOA president for 26 years. She wore her authority like armor and treated every rule like scripture carved from stone. The first time she visited my property, she didn't offer condolences. Didn't ask about the new guy settling in after losing his wife. She walked straight to my porch, tapped her clipboard and said, "You'll need to remove those agricultural installations. They're not congruent with our visual standards." I remember looking at her, stunned. "It's a memorial," I said, "not a business." Her lips thinned. Her eyes flicked across my land like a scanner looking for faults. Memorial or not, it disrupts uniformity. HOA guidelines are very clear. She left without another word. A week later, a violation notice arrived. Then another. Then 3 in a single day. Sprinklers too visible. Trellises too tall. Grapes classified as commercial intent crops. It didn't matter what I explained. Vivian always had an answer. I'm not a man who loses his temper often. 21 years in the army taught me discipline, patience, and how to choose battles wisely. But grief changes you. It thins your patience. It sharpens injustice into something you can feel in your bones, and Vivian's constant pressure wore at me like sandpaper on raw wood. Still, I tried to be civil, tried to keep the peace, but then something shifted. The HOA wasn't just sending letters. They were escalating. She scheduled unscheduled inspections, rummaging around my property line with her phone, snapping pictures like I was running some illegal factory. Her posture always leaned forward, like a hawk poised to strike prey. Her eyes darted too much. Her smile never touched her cheeks. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was hunting. I began documenting everything. Every trespass, every photo, every moment her shadow crossed into my yard. Deep down, I felt something coming. A bigger move. A harder hit. It arrived 2 weeks later. A formal notice taped to my door. Removal of unauthorized agricultural installation compliance required within 72 hours. Failure to comply will authorize HOA to remove materials at homeowner's expense. I stood on my porch reading it, hands trembling. That was the first time I whispered, "Vivian, you're going to regret this." I started preparing my paperwork, researching easements, deeds, plat maps, anything that could prove she overreached her authority. I didn't know it at the time, but an old survey map from the 1970s held the key. A key that would eventually blow her entire case apart. But before I could gather everything, before I could file an official challenge, Vivian made her most reckless move yet. She hired excavators, not for lawn trimming, not for drainage, maintenance. No, she sent them to tear out my vineyard, Nora's memorial, my last living connection to the woman I loved, and she did it without warning. No courtesy call, no final notice, not even the decency to knock. The machines arrived at dawn. Their engines rattled my windows. My breath turned cold the moment I saw the bucket hover over the first row of grapes, and just when I thought the morning couldn't get worse. Sheriff Grant arrived. He opened that deed folder like a judge, unveiling a verdict. And Vivian's world started cracking. Because the truth I hadn't fully realized yet, was that the HOA had been using an outdated property map for years, and part of the land Vivian was claiming as community-managed space wasn't theirs at all. It belonged to me, a fact she was about to learn in the most humiliating way possible. I felt the weight of Nora's old mug in my hand as the sheriff stepped between the excavator and my vines. The morning sun caught the rim of the cup. Warming my fingers through the ceramic, I whispered, "Nora, I think justice just showed up." After the sheriff stopped the excavators that morning, Vivian didn't head home like a normal person would. She lingered, arms locked across her chest, jaw grinding back and forth like she was chewing gravel. Her eyes shifted from the sheriff to the vines to me, blinking too fast. That blink of hers always gave away the storm inside her head. MC1, I knew right then. She wasn't done. Not even close. When the cruiser's taillights disappeared down Willow Bend Road, she marched toward me, heels stabbing the dirt with angry little clicks. "You've made a mess of things," she said, her tone tight enough to snap. "No," I replied, keeping my voice level. "I just stopped you from destroying something you had no right to touch." Her nostrils flared. "This isn't over, Mr. Hale." She used my last name like a weapon. Then she spun around, shoulders stiff, posture trembling with barely contained rage as she walked away. I noticed her hands shaking. People like Vivian didn't break easily, but they did crack, and cracks spread the next morning. I went down to the county records office. The place smelled like dust, coffee, and air conditioning that never turned off. Rows of old map. Drawers lined the walls like silent guardians of forgotten mistakes. The clerk looked half asleep when I approached, but she perked up when I asked for historic plat maps and boundary surveys. Going back how far? She asked. As far as the system lets me. She raised an eyebrow. That's going to be a stack. Good, I said. I like stacks. While she searched, I sat at a wooden table warped from years of elbows and spilled coffee. Sunlight from a narrow window cut across the maps like a spotlight. I realized my hands were sweating. Fear, anger, something in between? I wasn't sure, but what I did know, Vivian wouldn't let the sheriff's warning stop her. She'd double down people like her always did. The clerk rolled back a cart overflowing with documents. Big folders. Thick binders. Paper heavy enough to use as building material. Good luck. She muttered. I dug through the files like a man chasing buried treasure. 40-5 minutes later. I froze. A boundary map from 1974. A recorded deed from 1981. A land correction filing from 1992. All of them showed one thing, a sliver of land right where the HOA's community pathway sat was mine, not theirs. Mine, my breath caught. I leaned back in the creaky chair, letting that truth settle in my chest. Vivian had spent years treating me like a trespasser, while she had been trespassing the entire time. I imagined her face when she learned this. And for the first time in months, I felt the corner of my mouth lift. I spent the afternoon scanning everything. Old surveys, stamped deeds, easement notes written in handwriting from another era. By sundown, a dining table looked like a command center. The scent of grape leaves drifted through the open window. A soft reminder of why I was fighting Nora. Her laughter used to fill this house. Her dreams were planted beneath those vines. Every row held a memory I couldn't lose. I placed her old mug at the edge of the table. A little chipped. Still perfect? I'm doing this for you, I whispered. Right then, my phone buzzed. A number from the HOA board. Not Vivian. It was Harold, the quiet board member who rarely spoke at meetings. Can we meet? He asked. His voice trembled. Some things have been happening. Things you should know. Harold wasn't the brave type. If he was calling, something big was cracking inside the HOA. I agreed. He suggested the old picnic area near the lake, a spot far from Vivian's wandering ears. Harold sat on a bench, hat pulled low, foot tapping anxiously. He didn't even greet me. She's losing it, he whispered. Vivian. He nodded. She's been calling emergency board sessions. She wants us to authorize more actions against you. Inspections, fines, forced cleanups, even trespass citations. My jaw clenched. For what? Doesn't matter. She just wants you gone. He looked around nervously, she said, and I quote, If the sheriff won't let us remove his vines, we'll find something else to tear down. My stomach dropped. What else? I asked quietly. Harold swallowed hard. She mentioned your workshop. And your fence. And he hesitated. Your porch flag. I froze. The flag hanging above my porch wasn't decoration. It belonged to my father. Folded by military hands at his funeral, a symbol of service, sacrifice, and home. My throat tightened. What exactly did she say? I asked, voice low. He exhaled shakily. She said it breaks visual harmony and might require removal under new aesthetic standards. My blood ran hot. I didn't yell, didn't stand, didn't move. I just closed my eyes for a moment, letting the lake breeze cool the anger rising in my chest. Vivian wasn't just going after vines. Anymore, she was going after memories, legacies, family. I opened my eyes. Why are you telling me this? He looked ashamed, because I've been part of her votes for years. I knew she bent rules. But this has become something else. I don't want to be part of it anymore. I nodded slowly. Harold stood, glanced around again, and whispered, "She has something planned for Thursday's board meeting. I don't know what, but she's calling it a final enforcement action." Final. That word chilled me more than the breeze. As I drove home, dusk painted the sky in shades of copper and lavender. My headlights cut across the vineyard rows, the grapes glowing faintly like tiny lanterns. I parked and walked along the fence, running my hand along the cedar boards, solid, weathered, mined inside the house. I spread out the deed documents again. There it was, my property line, curving exactly where the HOA insisted it didn't. The truth was, right there in black ink, I felt both relief and a rising sense of dread. Vivian wouldn't accept this. Quietly, she'd push harder. Strike. Faster. And Thursday's meeting wasn't a discussion, it was an ambush. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the porch, and watched the moon appear over the hills. The night air carried a faint citrus smell from my neighbor's yard. Crickets chirped. Somewhere, a screen door slammed. I took a long breath. Nora used to tell me, when people show you their worst, but don't let them walk over you. I looked at the vineyard. The trellises cast long, thin shadows across the soil. I could almost hear her humming. I whispered to the wind, "I'm not letting her take this from us." The next morning, I wasn't surprised to see a white SUV creeping past my property. Vivian, her silhouette, leaned forward in the seat, scanning my yard like a predator circling prey. She parked at the edge of the cul-de-sac and stepped out with her tablet. Her heels clicked on the pavement. Click, click, click. She walked along my fence line, taking pictures, zooming in, zooming out. Her expression was off, too eager, too forced. Her mouth twitched every few seconds like she was fighting with herself. I watched from the porch, silent. She finally noticed me. Her smile came slow, stiff, unnatural, like someone trying to smile with a mouthful of secrets. "Morning." "Mr. Hale," she said. "Morning." She tilted her head. "Don't worry. Everything happening this week is completely within our authority." Smile again. Colder this time, sharper, like a blade dipped in sugar. I didn't respond. I just sipped from my father's old mug, letting the silence fill the space between us. After several long seconds, her smile faded. She turned, walked away. But her shoulders were stiff, and her pace was too fast to be calm. She was rattled, and rattled people make mistakes. Right. That afternoon, I sat with my evidence again, sorted, highlighted, prepared. Wasn't just defending my land anymore. I was preparing. For battle, a battle Vivian didn't realize she already lost. She thought Thursday would be her final enforcement action. She thought she'd corner me, break me, push me out. But Thursday would become something she never forgot, and something the HOA would never recover from, because in the bottom of one old file folded behind a dusty survey map, I found something that changed everything. Something the HOA never expected a homeowner to discover. A document that didn't just protect my vineyard. It exposed their biggest mistake, their biggest lie, their biggest fraud. I stared at the page, my pulse pounding in my ears. Then I whispered, "Vivian, you're in trouble now." The document I found wasn't large. Just one yellowed page folded at the bottom of a survey packet from decades ago. But sometimes the smallest page carries the biggest explosion. It was an easement correction and land adjustment filing from the late 70s. A quiet little change almost. Invisible, signed long before our HOA was even created. And that single adjustment shifted the boundary line by nearly 40 feet. 40 feet right into the heart of what the HOA had been calling community-maintained land. I leaned back in my chair, letting the shock settle. Air left my lungs slow and heavy. Vivian hadn't just violated property rights. The HOA had been operating their entire walking trail, their signage post, and part of their own irrigation junction on land that never belonged to them, and they'd been doing it for years. No wonder the newer maps looked weird. They weren't based on the corrected filing. They were based on the version before that update. A mistake frozen in time until now, I whispered to myself. This wasn't my fight. They picked it. I took the page outside and laid it across the porch table. The wood boards beneath it were warm from the sun. A breeze carried the faint scent of my vines, almost ripe. My father's flag fluttered softly above me. Whenever life got loud, that sound calmed me. A reminder that strength doesn't need noise. I stared at the page again. The more I studied it, the heavier the truth became. If this map was valid, and it was, stamped and filed, the HOA had no authority over the land. They claimed none. They single quotes debuilt their rules on a foundation made of air and Vivian. She was about to try enforcing authority she didn't even legally have. But I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Winning early makes people sloppy, and I needed to stay sharp. That evening, as the sky dimmed into a soft purple, I drove to the county archives to verify the document. The hallway smelled like old books, copier ink, and faint mildew, a scent that reminded me of a library I used to visit with Nora. A clerk with thick glasses scanned the page, then typed the serial number into her system. Her eyebrows lifted. "Oh, this one's old," she said. "But it's valid? You're sure?" She nodded. This correction supersedes every plat filed afterward. If a map didn't include this adjustment, the map is wrong, not the parcel. I felt a heat rise from my chest. Relief, vindication, anger, all mixed together like storm clouds colliding. "Can I get certified copies?" "Absolutely." The printer hummed. Pages rolled out with fresh ink, smelling like new justice. I walked out holding a folder that felt heavier than steel. Driving back home, the headlights washed over the vines. The grapes glowed faintly like soft lanterns strung across the soil, Nora used to say. Vineyards at night looked like they were dreaming. Tonight, they felt like they were waking up. When I parked, I saw a silhouette across the road, Vivian. Her SUV was angled toward my house, engine off, interior lights dim. She was watching my property through the windshield. Her shoulders looked tense, almost hunched. Her hands fiddled with something, her tablet probably. Her jaw moved, clenching and unclunged. She wasn't calm. She was unraveling. I stepped out of my truck. She stiffened. I didn't say a word. She didn't either, after a few long seconds. She drove off, her taillights disappearing around the bend. I stood there in the quiet, feeling a chill crawl across my spine. Something dangerous was brewing inside. Her Thursday's board meeting, the one Harold warned me about, was only hours away. I spent the morning preparing, organizing maps, highlighting easements, stacking evidence in a binder thicker than any HOA rulebook. The whole time, I felt Nora beside me. Not literally, but in those little thoughts, straighten the papers. Don't forget the timestamp. Stay steady. She was always better at details than me. I heard wind brush against the cedar fence outside. Softandrhythmic.com before the storm at noon. My phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize, I answered, expecting another board member instead. It was a neighbor I barely knew, a woman named Clara, who walked her dog every evening past my property. Her voice shook like she'd been crying. "You need to know. Vivian is talking to people, twisting the story. What's she saying? That you're dangerous. That you threatened her. That the sheriff only sided with you because you're manipulating the situation." I closed my eyes. "Counted to 3, and people believe her?" I asked. "Some do. But others are starting to question her. You're not the only person she's bullied." Her voice broke. She'll find me for my dog bowl once. Said the color wasn't allowed. That sounded exactly like Vivian. I thanked her and hung up by late afternoon. The clouds thickened overhead, turning the sky into a steel-gray blanket. The air smelled like rain and warm dirt, perfect backdrop for a showdown. I grabbed my binder and walked toward the neighborhood clubhouse, a building with white trim, navy shutters, and a parking lot Vivian treated like her private kingdom as I approached. People gathered outside. Some talked quietly. Some avoided eye contact. Some watched me with a mix of sympathy and curiosity. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Folded metal chairs lined the room. A long table sat up front, where the HOA board members were already seated. Vivian stood at the center, posture stiff, hair perfectly arranged. Tablet glowing in her hand, her eyes found mine. A tiny twitch pulsed near her right eyebrow. Her telltale sign she was nervous, but her voice came out smooth. Too smooth. "Mr. Hale," she said with forced politeness, "please take a seat. We have a lot to discuss." Her tone didn't hide the trap, but traps only work on people who walk in blind. I sat in the second row. My binder rested on my lap like a loaded weapon. The room filled. Neighbors whispering. Some supportive nods. Some wary glances. Vivian tapped her tablet. Tonight, she began. We address final enforcement regarding unauthorized land use, safety violations, and persistent non-compliance. Felt eyes shift toward me. She continued. Mr. Hale's agricultural installation has created nuisance conditions, attracted pests. And actually, I said quietly, standing up, before you continue, I need to present something. Vivian's eyes flashed, annoyed, threatened. This is my floor. Mr. Hale, she snapped. I held up the certified map. This takes precedence over your floor. Gasps rippled through the room. Vivian's posture tightened. If you interrupt again, I'll have the county clerk confirmed. This correction overruns every map the HOA depends on, I said, projecting my voice so the whole room could hear. And according to this document, the land you've been claiming is common area. I paused long enough to feel the air go still. Is legally mine. A murmur spread like wildfire through the room. Chairs shifted. People leaned forward. Vivian froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her eyes darted across the page from 20 feet away. Pupils shrinking. She tried to recover, shoulders pushing back, but her voice faltered. That's irrelevant. The HOA maintains. I stepped closer to the front row. The HOA has been trespassing for years, I continued. You've issued fines, inspections, and threats based on maps that were never corrected. This, I held up the page, is the real boundary. Vivian's hand trembled on her tablet. Her breathing quickened. Her chest rose and fell too fast. You're twisting documents, she said, voice cracking slightly. You're manipulating the county clerk verified it, I said. And Sheriff Grant already requested copies. Now. The room erupted. Whispers, glares, shock. The board members looked blindsided. Two exchanged anxious glances. Harold lowered his head, not in shame, but relief. Vivian's entire posture caved for one brief second before she snapped. Upright again. Her mask was slipping. Then came her breaking moment. Enough. She shouted louder than necessary. Her voice echoed off the walls. People flinched. Her cheeks flushed red. Her jaw clenched so tight I could hear her teeth grind. This meeting is adjourned, she barked. No decisions will be made based on forged documents. No one moved. No one backed her. It was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear, not anger. Not control, fear, because she knew what I knew. When truth hits paper, people stop believing in tyrants. Vivian grabbed her tablet and rushed toward the exit. Pushing past a few neighbors, the door swung open. Rain-soaked wind sweeping in as she disappeared into the storm. I stood there in the middle of the room, binder in hand, the weight of victory settling slow and steady. My father's words echoed in my mind. The truth doesn't shout, it stands. Vivian had been shouting for years, but tonight, the truth finally stood tall. When I stepped out of the meeting hall that night, the rain had eased, but the sky still carried the bruised colors of a storm that wasn't done yet. Water pooled in the clubhouse parking lot, reflecting the streetlights like broken shards of glass. Neighbors lingered in small circles, whispering, heads shaking, glancing between the clubhouse and me. Some offered gentle nods of support. Others looked shaken, uncertain, unsure what to believe, but everyone agreed on one thing. Vivian Cross had cracked as I walked toward my truck. Harold hurried over, umbrella trembling in his hands. "You didn't just rattle her," he said. "You hit the one place she never expected her authority." I could hear the worry in his voice. And the warning. "She's going to fight back," he whispered. "Harder." I nodded. "I know." He swallowed. "Be careful, Mr. Hale. She isn't thinking clearly anymore." The wipers slid across the glass in slow, tired arcs. My headlights cut through mist, drifting along the road like ghostly fingers. Inside the truck's cab, I could feel my pulse still heavy from the confrontation. I replayed her expression, the twitch near her eyebrow, the tremor in her voice, the frantic way she grabbed her tablet. Vivian wasn't angry, she was spiraling, and spiraling people don't retreat. They lash out. When I pulled onto my property, the vines shimmered faintly under the wet moonlight. Drops hung from each grape like tiny beads of molten silver. The vineyard looked peaceful, calm, alive, but something inside me tightened. Peace rarely lasts long in a war. I stepped out of the truck and froze. My cedar fence gate was open wide, open, swinging slightly in the wind. I hadn't left it like that, and the ground beneath it. Muddy boot prints. Someone had entered my yard. I walked along the fence line, the beam of my flashlight cutting across the soaked earth. The prints went from the gate straight toward the vines. My heart clenched at row 3. The light caught something horrifying. Cut vines, slashed irrigation lines, grapes crushed into muddy purple streaks. My throat tightened, breath catching like someone had pressed a fist into my chest. This wasn't vandalism. This was targeted, purposeful, vindictive. Someone had walked into the memorial vineyard, Nora's vineyard, and destroyed 15 feet of vines. I crouched down, touching the broken stems. Still wet, still fresh, they were cut with something sharp, a pruning blade or small hand. So, definitely not random, definitely not an accident. The rage that hit me wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was cold, controlled, focused. The kind of anger that doesn't burn, it freezes. I stood slowly and turned toward the road. A white SUV rolled slowly past the edge of my property, so her headlights off. Her silhouette still, her posture stiff. She didn't stop this time. Just drove by like a ghost gliding down the street. But she knew. I knew. And the message was clear. If she couldn't destroy the vineyard legally, she'd destroy it quietly. I spent the next hour reviewing security footage. Cameras positioned around the property captured everything. Rain hitting the trellis wires, my truck headlights returning, and then, 9:37 p.m., a figure slipped through the side fence panel. Umbrella, dark jacket. Quick, jerky movements, the person knelt at the vines, turning their head every few seconds, paranoid. Shaking the camera didn't catch the face, just the posture, and posture is hard to hide. Nervous, shifting weight. Fast, rigid gestures. Twitchy hands, my stomach tightened. Vivian, even blurred by rain and distance. Her body language was unmistakable. I pressed pause. A part of me felt sick, because destroying vines wasn't the action of someone in control. It was the act of someone, unraveling, A cornered mind, a drowning ego, a collapsing throne. Forwarded the footage to Sheriff Grant with a brief note. Vandalism on private property. Evidence attached. We need to talk. I barely slept. Dawn cast a soft orange glow across the kitchen table. Map still spread like a battlefield plan. My phone buzzed at 7:12 a.m. Sheriff Grant. Morning, he said. Got your footage. Then you know I know enough to start an investigation, he interrupted. And enough to tell you something important. My grip tightened on the phone. She came to the station last night. Filed a complaint claiming you threatened her during the meeting. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. When? I asked. 40 minutes after the meeting ended. She was on my property at that time, I said, which is why her complaint doesn't hold water. But it does prove something else. What's that? She's desperate. His tone hardened. Be home in an hour. I'm coming by. I sat on the porch with my father's old mug warming my hands. Steam drifted up, mingling with the cool morning air. A small sparrow landed on the rail, hopping along like it owned the place. For a moment, the world felt calm. But under that calm, a storm blazed. Sheriff Grant arrived exactly when he said he would. He parked beside the fence, studied the cut vines, and let out a slow exhale. She crossed the line, he muttered. She's been crossing lines, I said. He nodded. I'll take statements, collect evidence. But I want you to understand. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Vivian isn't thinking rationally anymore. The kind of pressure she's under? People snap. I'm not afraid of her, I said. I know. But cornered people don't think about consequences. Only control. Looked at the damaged vines again. This isn't just violation of HOA authority. It's criminal now. Heavy silence settled. Then he leaned in slightly. Be ready, he added. Because when people like her lose power, they don't fall quietly. By late afternoon, the HOA gossip machine was in full swing. Word of the meeting spread faster than wildfire. Neighbors stopped by. Some offered support. Some apologized for doubting me. Some admitted they'd been bullied for years. To Clara brought cookies and whispered, she's losing control of the narrative. Harold texted, she's calling another emergency session tomorrow. Says she, correct the misinformation. And then came the strangest message. Screenshot sent by 3 different neighbors. Vivian had posted an announcement on the community page. Final property action tomorrow. Enforcement will proceed. My heart stopped for half a beat. Final action? The same phrase she used before sending the excavators? I stood there on my porch, phone in hand, reading her words again. Enforcement will proceed. But she didn't specify how, or when, or with what authority, which meant one thing. She was going to strike illegally. Vivian couldn't win the legal way. She couldn't win the public way. She couldn't win the moral way. So she was reaching for the only thing left. Force, harassment, sabotage, destruction, whatever she believed would scare me into giving up. I walked to the vineyard. Running my hand along the damaged section, the cuts were sharp, clean, intentional, cruel. Nora's vines deserved better. I deserved better. The neighbors deserved better. I took a long breath, letting the scent of wet leaves fill my lungs. Then I whispered to the broken vines, she's almost done. Just one more push. And she'll fall. Night ambience. Frogs near the lake. Distant car passing that night. I sat at the edge of the vineyard with a lantern beside me, reviewing every document again. Boundary correction. Historic maps. Easement filings. Time-stamped video. Sheriff's notes. Everything aligned. Vivian's collapse was no longer a possibility, it was inevitable. At 11:43 p.m., headlights flashed across my fence again. Her SUV slowed, crawled, paused. She stared directly at me, a silhouette framed in her windshield. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she pressed the accelerator and vanished into the darkness. I watched her go, steady and unshaken. because she wasn't the hunter anymore. She was the cornered one. And tomorrow, she would make the biggest mistake of her life. The sun hadn't even cleared the hills when trouble rolled down my road again. I heard it before I saw it. That deep diesel rumble that sends a shiver through the soil. Excavator engines again. My grip tightened around my father's old mug. Steam drifted upward, mixing with the cool dawn air. I stepped onto the porch, cedar boards creaking beneath me, and there they were, 2 excavators creeping toward, my vineyard-like metallic beasts on a leash. Behind them came a white SUV, Vivian's single quotes. Her window rolled down halfway. Her eyes shone with a strange mix of triumph and panic, like someone trying to celebrate while drowning. She stepped out, clipboard in one hand, tablet in the other. Her blazer wasn't crisp today. Her hair wasn't perfect. Dark circles sat beneath her eyes. She looked like someone who hadn't slept, eaten, or blinked enough in days. That twitch near her right eyebrow pulsed nonstop. Today, she said, voice shaking with fake authority, "We complete enforcement." I took one slow step forward. "You're trespassing," I said quietly. "You have no legal standing here." Her breath hitched just slightly, but she forced a smile. The board approved emergency action. "Your installation violates community standards. These machines will remove it today." The excavator operator looked uncertain. He kept glancing between us, sweat gathering on his forehead. "You don't have authority," I repeated. Calm and steady, Vivian's eyes flicked to the excavators. "Start." With the central row, she snapped the operator. Hesitated. I said, "Start." He lifted the bucket, and that's when a sheriff's siren cut through the morning like lightning slicing a dark. Sheriff Grant stepped out with a purpose, at low. Boots hitting the gravel like punctuation marks. He didn't look confused or uncertain. He looked ready, ma'am, called out. Walking toward Vivian, step away from the machinery. Vivian stiffened. "This is HOA business," she insisted. "Law enforcement has no ma'am," the sheriff repeated. Firmer, step back. Her mouth opened, closed. Opened again, but now she finally stepped back. Heels sinking into the soft dirt, Sheriff Grant turned to the operator. "Cut your engine. Leave the property immediately." The man didn't hesitate. He killed the engine so fast, the machine shuddered. Vivian's whole posture buckled. "You can't interfere," she shouted. "This is a violation of its criminal trespassing," the sheriff said, pulling out a folder. "On land that does not belong to the HOA?" Gasps rippled from the small crowd forming around us neighbors, stepping out of their homes. Pajamas and coffee cups still in hand. The sheriff opened the folder. Inside were the certified documents I'd given him, the corrected boundary map, the easement file, the historical deed notification all stamped, all legal, all devastating. Vivian stared at the papers as if they were written in fire. That's fake," she whispered. "It's county verified," the sheriff replied. "And based on these filings, your organization has been operating structures and pathways on Mr. Hale's land for decades." Her face drained of every drop of color. "No," she breathed. "No, this can't. It gets worse," the sheriff continued. "There's also video evidence of you entering this property at night and destroying private agricultural vines." Her body swayed. Her hand gripped her tablet like it was the only thing keeping her upright. You can't prove that," she muttered. "We have time-stamped footage," he said, holding up a flash drive. "And eyewitness reports." She looked around, desperate for anyone to defend her. But the neighbors who once feared her now stood shoulder to shoulder around the Sheriff Clara Harold, Mrs. Lester, even the couple with twins who she fined for sidewalk chalk once. No one moved to help her. The sheriff stepped closer. "Ma'am, you are being placed under arrest for vandalism, trespassing, falsifying a complaint." an attempted property destruction. Her breathing turned shallow. "You can't arrest me," she whispered. "I'm the HOA president." "You were the sheriff," corrected. "Not anymore." He turned her around and clasped cuffs around her wrists. She didn't resist. She didn't fight. She just stared at the ground, the tremor in her hands shaking her entire body, as the sheriff guided her toward the cruiser. She twisted her head toward me. There was no anger left, just disbelief and fear. "You did this," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "You did." Her eyes widened, as if she'd just realized the truth. For the first time, then the cruiser door shut. The click echoed across the vineyard. When the sheriff drove away, neighbors approached me. Some clapped my shoulder. Some apologized. Some simply sighed in relief. One older man said, "About damn time." Another whispered, "You saved this place." And Claire Eyes Glassy said, "She hurt so many people." "Thank you." I nodded, but a heavy ache sat in my chest. This was never about winning. It was about protecting something sacred after everyone left. I walked into the vineyard. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, making the grapes glow golden violet. I touched the damaged row. Cut vines, broken stems. I knelt down and whispered, "I'll replant you. I promise." MC4 for the first time in what felt like years. The air didn't feel suffocating. It felt clean that evening. I sat on the porch with Nora's old mug. The vineyard shimmered under the last orange light of sunset. A soft breeze carried the scent of ripening. Fruit peace, real peace, settled like a warm blanket across my land. Vivian's downfall didn't feel victorious. It felt necessary. People think HOA stories are about rules, letters, and lawns being too tall, but they're not. They're about dignity, respect. Your home should never be a place where fear lives. It should be a place where memories grow, where you breathe deeply, where your father's flag waves steady in the wind, where your wife's dreams grow on the vines you planted together. MC5, and sometimes, to protect that peace, you have to fight. Not with anger. Not with revenge, but with truth. Because truth is a quiet. It's kind of justice, and quiet justice lasts the longest. So that's the story of how a grieving homeowner, an old vineyard, and a stack of forgotten maps exposed the biggest HOA fraud my neighborhood ever saw. If you've ever faced a nightmare HOA, drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to hear how the new HOA board tried to fix the mess Vivian left behind, well, that's a story for the next video.